The Titanic sinks in the icy Atlantic. A Russian submarine implodes in the undersea thriller Crimson Tide. And a cruise ship is terrorized by a monster from the deep. These disasters at sea become blockbuster movies in the hands of Hollywood's masters of special effects. Coming up, we'll submerge 12,000 feet with director James Cameron as he applies state-of-the-art visual effects to sink the Titanic. Then we'll see how he fills the ship with computer-generated passengers.
We used all the tricks we knew, and we invented some new tricks as well.
We'll witness the staging of Crimson Tide's climactic sea battle in a Los Angeles swimming pool. And we'll see how effects artists turn a pleasure cruise into the ultimate nightmare. It's a voyage across the 7 seas as filmmakers steer their vessels towards certain disaster in this special edition of Movie Magic. Movie Magic presents Disasters at Sea. The Titanic endures as a symbol of 20th century humanity's worship of technology and opulence, and the realization of our ultimate vulnerability. Now, culminating several years of dedicated research and production, writer-director James Cameron is fully utilizing the potential of filmmaking to bring her back to life.
It's not just a question of taking the audience back through time to 1912 and putting them on the deck of the ship. It's a question of creating an emotional state, a state of emotional openness, so that they can understand that event for the impact that it would have had on those people.
On its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, across the North Atlantic, the Titanic sank about 1,000 miles before reaching New York. After 2 years of preparation, Cameron has come to this very spot, having assembled a deep dive expedition that will take him down to the Titanic wreck. The production has chartered twin Mir submersibles from the Russian Shirshov Institute of Oceanography. With a revolutionary camera housing mounted on one of the subs, Cameron and 3 others set out on the dangerous 2.5-mile dive to the ocean floor.
Okay, 100 meters? Yeah, I'll take us right to the bow. Okay, the bow should be exactly, it should be dead ahead, about 15 meters. Just stop right here. See it? Look at that. Bingo.
Gathering crucial research data and filming spectacular footage for the opening sequence of his movie, Cameron makes a total of 14 dives to Titanic, spending 10 to 12 hours at the wreck site on each mission. He has now spent more time on the Titanic than its passengers did.
It all started with this footage of the wreck. It set the bar very high for a standard of realism in the film. It's like we didn't fake it. We didn't just do model shots. We went to the real shipwreck and filmed it. And so there's a sense of, verisimilitude that begins with frame 1 of the movie.
Following 6 months of research that also included interviews with living survivors and consultation with such leading Titanic experts as visual historian Ken Marshall, Cameron has compiled a highly detailed timeline describing the order of events on the ship during her last few hours.
It's breaking because it's got down force here, up force here.
At Digital Domain, the visual effects studio co-founded by Cameron, he diagrams every stage of the ship's sinking for visual effects supervisor Rob Legato and his team.
Jim's attention to accuracy was complete. He wanted it to be not only a piece of entertainment, but it's also an educational tool that one day, if people just want to learn about the Titanic, would actually refer to the film itself.
Digital Domain's first step is to translate Cameron's description of the sinking into a computer simulation from the point of collision with the iceberg to the Titanic's final resting place. Cameron gives constant direction to the work in progress.
Too high out of the water at that point. The water line should be right about there.
By the time he approves the final simulation, Cameron believes it will stand up as the definitive depiction of what really happened to the Titanic. Using the simulation as their blueprint, Legato and his team embark on their quest to faithfully reenact the tragedy. In Acton, California, about 100 miles north of Los Angeles, a water tank has been constructed large enough to accommodate the 1/8 scale Titanic built by model supervisor Donald Pennington. A large crane suspends the ship's stern over the tank. The seam where the model will break has been weakened to ensure the desired separation.
This actually happened. It lifted itself up to about 45 degrees. This was the weak area, and it couldn't lift itself anymore. What it basically did is bent it like a beer can.
A large green screen is raised behind the model. This will enable a different background sky to be digitally added to the shot later. The 8-ton model is now ready for the plunge. 5 cameras are positioned to capture the fall from all angles. One camera is handheld by an operator in the tank, just feet away from the expected point of impact. Just before action is called, the ship is hosed down. The Titanic must appear as if it has just lifted up out of the water.
Cut the water, stand by. Ready to go any moment. Roll camera. Action! Cut.
As hoped for, the model made a clean break.
We're checking now, see if it looks good. This is a great angle. Ooh, that looks cool. Let's see that one. Okay, E camera looks good. Okay, let's see D camera. Ooh, it looked great.
One of the most powerful angles was captured by the handheld camera. Back at Digital Domain, the effects team is preparing to film a close-up of the shipbreak, which will be intercut with the footage from Acton. For this shot, Pennington has built a 1/8 scale model of the Titanic's midsection. This time, small pyrotechnic charges are affixed to the inside of the hull to convey the violence of the massive vessel splitting in half.
All the cameras are focused on the side of the hull, and it's going to bulge out, and then it's all rigged with pyro, and it's going to rip the side out just like the real Titanic did.
Because the cameras will be in close, attention to such detail as thousands of rivets is essential. Just before filming, a crew member dives down for a final check of the explosives. The signal is given that everything is properly wired and ready to go.
The whole top of the deck fell.
The model Titanic appears to have broken exactly as planned.
Went wild and put 5 auxiliary tears in.
Legato awaits the replay.
Looks good. Structure looks good.
When the model shots are combined with computer-generated imagery, and footage from the production's full-size Titanic set, James Cameron has turned back the clock to April 15th, 1912.
I had a goal in this film to take you into and become a participant in one of the more interesting and fascinating events of the 20th century, the sinking of Titanic, and put you there as an eyewitness.
At DreamQuest Images, a special effects facility in Simi Valley, California, a team of 10 model makers has been hard at work for the past 12 weeks. The result of their labor is 6 meticulously crafted miniature submarines, 3 Russian Akulas, and 3 U.S. Tridents. These scale models will be integral to the Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman undersea adventure, Crimson Tide. Many shots in the movie will be filmed on a smoke-filled stage, which creates the illusion of an underwater environment. But for a scene that calls for a submarine to implode, there's no substitute for real water. At the Los Angeles Swim Stadium, a crew of up to 60 people has spent the past 2.5 months working in the deep end. The result? Less than 2 minutes of finished film. Before shooting could even begin, a temporary steel and wood structure was built over a large section of the pool.
Well, the thing with filming underwater is when you get down past 100 feet, it's dark. The submarines we're filming are around 1,000 feet. Technically, it's black. You can't see anything. And we had a choice. We could either film at night, which would have been grueling in the winter, or enclose the structure. So we can film during the day.
Now the weeks of hard work have led up to a dramatic moment: the destruction of a Russian Akula submarine by an American torpedo.
The illusion we wanted to give was that it explodes under the tail section, and that rips the whole stern apart, and that begins the catastrophic collapse as the pressure hull begins to implode. And as it gets to the engine center, that blows apart. So it really is an interesting choreography of implosion and explosion.
For this climactic scene, 11 separate charges will detonate in less than 1/4 of a second.
This is the biggest bomb. It's 24 ounces of black powder and phosphorus mix with a real hot core. This is going in the nose. This is the last hurrah.
Capturing the massive, exceedingly quick series of blasts on film will require some very special high-speed cameras. 2 Photosonics cameras are set to run at 300 frames per second. When the film is later projected at the normal speed of 24 frames per second, the blast sequence will appear to last more than 12 times its actual duration. The cameras are placed in custom-designed 400-pound aluminum housings nicknamed Maytags by the crew.
We have to put weight in the side of each housing in order to get it down, because once you seal it up, it becomes a big buoyant bubble, and they'll float. And then we have to put about 400 pounds on the side to get it to the bottom.
Each housing contains both a film and video camera. This allows Director of Underwater Photography Jim Dixon to see the shot each camera will hopefully deliver.
The underwater explosions look different than explosions in the air. They have a very curious effect. They kind of expand and then they contract on themselves. Practically no one has seen underwater explosions because obviously you'd be dead because of the shock.
As the hour gets later, the crew meticulously sets up this split-second shot. 2 Hydroflex underwater cameras are also placed at the bottom of the pool. These will provide additional angles of the blast. Even with a crew comprised of experienced divers and ex-Navy SEALs, the process is time-consuming.
I would say the biggest challenge for me and for this whole production is because we're working in water and everything just takes longer. The simple act of moving a light stand takes a command from above and the guy to move it, and then is it okay? Everything just takes forever.
That's me, camera. Put your focus at 30 feet, right on the money.
Real Trident submarines are nuclear-powered, but this mini-sub is man-powered. divers have laid a 60-foot track at the bottom of the pool. The sub runs along that track on a low dolly. Braided cable called music wire runs from the sub to a dolly mounted on its own track topside.
And 3, 2, 1, go.
As this dolly moves, the sub travels exactly the same distance at the same speed. When the dolly hits this micro switch, a computer will trigger the lightning-quick sequence of blasts. Since the explosion is potentially dangerous, the dolly will be pulled by 6 crew members outside the pool structure. But explosions alone will not simulate an authentic underwater destruction. What is needed is an implosion effect as the ruptured submarine collapses. This model has been loaded with 6 large glass jars, which will be pumped down to near vacuums at the last minute. When small detonators break the jars, water will rush in to fill the vacuums, thus imploding the model. The sub shell is made from 1/32-inch lead, especially used for its soft pliability. Finally, everything is nearly ready. The sub is in place at the bottom of the pool, loaded with vacuum jars and a stockpile of explosives. As the pool area is cleared, the air from the jars is suctioned through an umbilical cord. Now, weeks of hard work have led up to this moment.
Camera speed! Propeller speed! 3, 2, 1, pull!
The video playback monitor confirms the shot is a complete success. The film is now transferred into a specially designed computer program. Digital effects supervisor Dan DeLue fine-tunes film images. He can add, subtract, or manipulate parts of a picture to increase the sense of realism. For the implosion sequence, digital torpedoes are created, complete with realistic-looking wake. Finally, the talent of dozens of individuals comes together for a series of underwater illusions that defy even the closest scrutiny.
That's where Dreamquest shone, because you're not watching the facts. You're not aware of it. You, part of the audience, are on that submarine, and that's a real submarine, and those are real torpedoes that are threatening your life. That's what we try to do. We try to take you, we try to transport you into another world. And in order for us to transport you into another world, we have to make it real.
I think when we first read the script or you first look at the storyboards, that's probably when your heart kind of stops, when you look at what you need to do. But I think almost immediately the imagination and the fun of it kind of hits you. And you begin to think, how can we do this better than it's ever been done before? It's basically a lifestyle, it's not just a job. I think you really want to do this stuff. And that's what I like about features, is it's handcrafted. I mean, every frame, and you spend months for just a few seconds, you know, and hopefully those few seconds are the ones that you remember when you leave the theater.
For a ship at sea, nothing is more ominous than an iceberg. Frozen islands jutting up from the ocean, icebergs can tear apart the sturdiest of ocean liners as though they were mere toys. On April 14, 1912, an iceberg sank the ship everyone believed to be unsinkable. Now, writer-director James Cameron is recreating this most famous of all maritime disasters in his epic motion picture, Titanic.
There are more windows here to equalize the pressure.
Based on years of exhaustive research, including making numerous dives to the Titanic wreck site himself, Cameron is determined to paint a historically accurate picture of what happened to the Titanic. But he also seeks to capture the intense emotion of the event, which we feel through the love story of Jack and Rose, played by Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet.
They are in a way the doorway into Titanic. You go into the movie through them. And then pretty soon you're halfway through the picture and you find out, my God, I'm on Titanic. And Titanic just hit an iceberg and it's sinking.
The challenge of bringing back the Titanic is so immense, it requires construction of a whole new studio, Fox Studios Baja in Mexico. Several sound stages are built to house completely accurate reproductions of the ship's interiors. And in a 17 million gallon water tank covering the equivalent area of 2 football fields, Cameron's team is erecting the largest movie set ever. But size isn't the most amazing aspect of this Titanic replica. The original shipbuilding firm, Harland & Wolff in Belfast, Ireland, opened their private archive to Cameron. He was given access to designs which were thought to have been lost. These allowed Cameron to recreate the Titanic with unprecedented accuracy and detail.
He's a driven guy. To even envision pulling a movie like this together and doing something of this scale and this magnitude, and to build it full scale, to make it right, and in this film, people will be able to experience the Titanic the way it really was.
On the upper deck of the completed set, Cameron prepares to film a scene occurring just after the Titanic's collision with the iceberg. The crew chops large blocks of ice into smaller chunks to look like dislodged pieces of the iceberg. Once satisfied with the look of the ice, Cameron leads DiCaprio and Winslet through a rehearsal of the scene.
And action! Then imagine that in the next second or two it goes behind the bridge, you can't see it anymore, you want it to see.
Jim is certainly unlike anybody I've ever worked with. I think he really not only understands the technical side of how to make something look unbelievable, but throughout all his films, he's really had a lot of concentration on performances, too.
Place forward and sort of see what you do.
All right. You're kissing. Crash!
To recreate the enormous iceberg that sank the Titanic, Cameron looks to his own visual effects studio, Digital Domain, and visual effects supervisor, Rob Legato.
He and I spent a lot of time in what we call the pre-visualization phase, figuring out what the shots are going to look like. And, you know, he commanded a team of literally hundreds of people who are working on some of the most complicated effect shots ever.
Cameron and the movie's historical consultants have provided Legato with every available clue as to the iceberg's shape, including survivors' accounts and physical evidence from the wreck.
If they'd hit it head on, there would have been fatalities, but the ship probably would have stayed afloat long enough to save a lot more people. But they actually grazed it. The iceberg moved all the way down the side of the ship and forced open a number of seams where the shell plating was riveted together. And as a result of that, those extensive flooding points, the ship began to take on water. Not terribly rapidly, but in a way that was faster than they could pump back out and was over such a length of the ship, over a third of the ship, that it was doomed to sink.
Legato's team constructs several scale models of the frozen monolith.
We know exactly where it hit under the water, and we know exactly where it scraped above the water and how high above the ship it actually was. So we basically took that, and that became the spine or the blueprint for the shape of the iceberg.
For an on-deck collision shot with Winslet and DiCaprio, the stars are shot in front of a green screen with real ice pouring onto the set. A 12-foot-tall model of the iceberg is filmed separately. Digital compositing supervisor Mark Forker then creates CG iceberg pieces. When all the elements are composited or combined, the fateful collision is faithfully reenacted. To recreate the underwater impact, the effects team has constructed a 1/8 scale model of the Titanic's hull. It is filmed in a tank along with another iceberg model. This one is sculpted out of wax in order to break apart when hit.
At the point of impact, we moved into a lot of close-ups of the effect of the iceberg hitting the ship. So at that tight proximity, it was pretty violent.
sinking of the Titanic began with water rushing into the cargo hold through ruptures in the hull. To actualize Cameron's vision of this event, Digital Domain's model team has constructed a quarter-scale version of the cargo hold. The set is dressed with period-accurate mailbags and cargo boxes. The wall is built out of lead plating, which will rip away when hit by a powerful surge of water. This is provided by a specially designed 15 fire hose water jet.
That high-speed hose is attached behind it, so it looked like as it opened up, it's just the seawater just coming in at tremendous force.
The torrent ruptures the hull seams and begins the Titanic's irreversible demise. This replica of a hallway in the first-class section is also a quarter-scale miniature. It is historically accurate in every detail, including the antique furniture and lighting fixtures.
It used to be a door, you know, and then we carefully sculpt it.
The miniature doors are broken apart and then glued together so they will crumble as the hall is flooded. The water will be pumped at high speed through a series of tube-like chutes.
We had to get a small enough camera that would fit in this quarter-scale hallway that was probably no bigger than that.
Nash's camera is placed on a dolly and pulled backwards down the hallway.
Roll cameras! Action!
Through its intricate miniatures and inventive physical effects, Digital Domain has dramatically captured the chaos inside the sinking Titanic. But one of the most difficult challenges still lies ahead: the creation of a computer-generated ocean.
Up to that point, it was always the big thing everybody shied away from, is that, well, you can't do digital water, just as impossible. So that's where you sort of kind of go in blind faith and say, I know we can do it. I know it can be done.
Digital Ocean supervisor Richard Kidd and his team have the task of creating an artificial ocean for more than 70 shots. They must take into account the water's varied appearance, with changes in such factors as time of day, cloud coverage, and wind speed.
You plug in all the parameters of what you want the water to look like. The sun is in a certain place. The wind is blowing at 6 miles per hour. And you tell it where the camera is located in 3D space, and it just gives you a plate of ocean.
The ship is actually a 45-foot-long model filmed at Digital Domain. CG animators then create the water spray and wake that would be left by the giant ocean liner, and make it appear as if the Titanic is actually afloat. James Cameron's epic love story and Digital Domain's magic allow the audience to board the Titanic on its fateful voyage.
Winds tighter and tighter and tighter toward that inevitable conclusion, and you find yourself sort of sucked in by that romance. So it's a little bit sort of using the emotions of the audience to draw them in and make them a participant in an event. But it's not kind of dishonest, because there's an intense poignancy and an intense emotionality to the event itself.
Iceberg, right ahead!
On the set of the action thriller Deep Rising, actor Treat Williams is being thrashed about by an invisible enemy. But in the finished movie, it's an angry sea monster that holds him in a death grip.
What's great about this is we're pushing the envelope on special effects, and we're certainly pushing the envelope on acting with nothing there.
During filming in Vancouver, Canada, Williams never actually sees the deadly creature.
What are you looking at?
To merge humans and beast, plate or background shots are first filmed with the actors. Director Stephen Summers and visual effects supervisor Mike Shea oversee the action, into which the creature will later be inserted. To create the illusion that Williams is being held up in the air by the monster, The scene is filmed on a 12-foot-high platform.
He does a 360, and as he's almost about to come around...
Ready, and action!
Williams is pulled across the platform on a dolly to simulate being violently snapped from one side of the room to the other.
Cut. Good. Great. That's what we're doing.
For shots where the digital monster will fill most of the frame, Williams is filmed in front of a blue screen. This will allow the visual effects team to digitally cut and paste his image into their computer-generated shots. A crane arm stands in for the monster's long tentacle. While Williams wrestles the imaginary beast, a team of computer graphic or CG artists at DreamQuest Images in Simi Valley, California, is busy bringing it to life. Their assignment is to create the biggest, most ferocious, and completely unique sea monster ever.
The eyeball of the creature is about 5 feet in diameter. The mouth probably about the size of a Cadillac, with about 20 to 30 teeth lined around it.
To animate the monster, Dressel's team uses a computer animation technique called spline deformation. A spline is a digital line that, when manipulated, controls a CG character's movement.
The creature's bones follow along a spline. The animator will animate the spline, and the creature follows along with it.
Process of experimentation. You'll just have the creature wrapped around a tree and lift him up. But the creature has a certain grace about him. So you'll find that you'll start inventing things in terms of how the creature coils up, how many coils it puts underneath himself to actually get treed into the air.
With the magic of computer animation, the artists at DreamQuest Images have created a terrifying sea monster of enormous proportions. But could such an animal possibly exist outside of Hollywood? According to Mike Vecchione, a zoologist at the National Marine Fisheries Service, some rare species of squid come close. In 1990, about 100 miles off Boston Harbor, fishermen dropped their nets deeper than usual. When they pulled them in, they found a 6-foot-long squid.
First of all, it hadn't been reported from this part of the world before. And secondly, that this was the largest specimen that had ever been caught or had ever been seen of this species.
What makes this species of squid, called Taningia, so unusual are its tentacles. Instead of being covered with suction cups, the Taningia is armed with razor-sharp claws.
We got calls from people wondering whether it was safe to go in the water, whether they could go scuba diving. This Taningia was caught 260 meters down in the ocean, which is much deeper than any human would go.
Reassuring, but in the movie Deep Rising, the monster emerges from the depths and attacks a cruise ship. The beast's feeding frenzy leaves a cargo hold littered with human skeletons.
Roll cameras! Action!
When the monster punches a hole in the ship, the cargo hold is flooded by a massive wall of water. This set, constructed on a large parking lot in Simi Valley, California, is a quarter-scale miniature of the real cruise ship's cargo hold. To create this grisly scene, visual effects supervisor Mike Shea and his team from DreamQuest Images mold more than 100 18-inch long skeletons out of a plastic called Dynacast. Dressed with fake blood made from Caro syrup, red food coloring, and methyl cellulose, the skeletons are scattered about the set.
Oh, give me a leg.
The crew uses reference photos to position the skeletons before each take. The flood will be released from a water tank above the set. With a capacity of 5,000 gallons, it holds enough water for 2 takes.
The water, we had to worry about how things would float, you know, how much do they sink, how do they come apart when the water hits them.
The set is also dressed with miniature wooden cargo crates. These are loosely held together with nails and filled with small sandbags to weigh them down during flooding.
In some cases, it was just going back and putting a little more weight in the cargo boxes, or cutting them up a little more so they'll break a little sooner.
With the set dressed and skeletons in position, a protective shield is placed over the camera lens just before filming.
Roll camera. Action.
As thousands of gallons of water flood the cargo hold, the miniature skeletons are washed away in its wake. Creating the chilling aftermath of one of Hollywood's most gruesome sea disasters. At the end of the movie, the terrifying creature gets its due. To stage a particularly gory shot, Mike Shea and his team combine ingredients for sea monster stew. First, pumpkins and watermelons are painted black. When blown apart, they'll look like chunks of the monster's flesh.
It's dropped, and you see it breaks up into 3 pieces. Just what we want for pumpkin production.
The melons are placed in large explosion mortars, along with plastic bags filled with gasoline. Next, rags soaked in buckets of a gelatinous food thickener are added to the mix. These will stand in for monster slime. While Mike Shea watches on a remote monitor, the cameras roll. The blast was so powerful that even the crew members' cars were splattered with the slimy concoction. Such ingenious effects combined with computer animation result in a monstrous display of maritime movie magic. Hundreds of passengers cling to life as the Titanic is swallowed by the sea. As with all aspects of the Titanic story, director James Cameron is uncompromising in the creation of a historically accurate portrayal of what happened to those who perished. But capturing shots like this safely required a revolutionary approach. Cameron has employed a cast of digital actors.
There are some shots where you'll see 1,000 people who are all computer animated, using what we call motion capture, where we use actors and performers to act out bits of action. That action would be sampled by the computer and used to animate that figure, and then that figure could be put anywhere on the ship in any shot that we choose.
In charge of the film's computer-generated, or CG, actors is digital effects supervisor Mark Lassoff. He and his team of animators have created a library of CG characters that can be used and reused as the shots demand.
I really didn't know how to produce digital humans on a model Titanic when we started the process. I had been familiar with motion capture, but hadn't really used it. But what we got was very subtle and human animation.
Here in Digital Domain's motion capture studio, performers have been outfitted with reflective markers. These markers reflect an infrared pulse emitted from 7 motion capture cameras placed around the room. The pattern of these reflections is then translated by computer into a moving digital skeleton.
I don't believe that there are animators working right now who, without reference, can pull out of the thin air the subtlety of movement, the little foot turn, the little head cock that really sells something as being completely and absolutely photorealistic.
As seen in this demonstration, the movements of the human performers, shown in the corners of the screen, are exactly replicated by the CG characters. In this sweeping shot over the top of the Titanic, every person is computer generated.
People have commented that their eye goes to this woman picking up a child because it's such a human action, and you just believe that this mother is picking up her child.
First, a model of the Titanic is filmed on a motion control stage.
Walk forward a couple steps.
Then the movements of a woman and child are captured. The motion image begins as a set of points. An animator then transforms the points into lines that fully display the subtleties of movement. Finally, the characters' bodies and costumes are digitally added.
You've essentially communicated through this shot that there are lives aboard the Titanic.
It is this attention to detail, driven by Cameron's demand for absolute historical accuracy, that pulses through every shot in the film.
Never before has a motion picture been made that is going to come so close to what the ship really was like. You will feel as if you're actually on that ship, smelling that salt spray, walking down the deck. It's just mind-boggling.
To create the crowds of passengers for much of the sinking sequence, traditional animation proved as effective as motion capture without endangering human performers.
There's a shot where the camera is looking at the ship going down. We need to have people hanging onto the rail. We need to have people getting sucked under. We need to have people getting swirled away. And these are all the things that the director said he wanted to see. So we have to put all these people on the docking bridge that's getting submerged into the water.
First, a miniature of the ship's stern is photographed in a water tank. Then, individually animated digital characters are inserted.
We used all the tricks we knew, and we invented some new tricks as well.
When James Cameron's Titanic sinks on the big screen, no one in the audience will be thinking about what's real and what's computer-generated. Their thoughts will turn to the real-life victims of this unforgettable tragedy from nearly a century ago. When filmmakers plunge into the deep, whether waging intense underwater warfare in Crimson Tide or creating a horrific monster for Deep Rising, Hollywood employs the magic of cinema to immerse the audience in disasters at sea. And in his quest to reveal history in epic fashion, James Cameron has gone to any heights and great depths uncovering Titanic secrets lost in time, but found through movie magic.